Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another Wine Shark Wednesday with your host, Wine Shark. How's everybody doing this Wednesday, the 24th of June? I see just a few of you guys joining me here. So, just been a pretty busy time around here at the Wine Shark Studio Central. Been talk about what's new today. We're going to talk about a little bit about wine politics. Don't worry, it's not going to get heavy or anything. We're just going to talk about economics and stuff like that. And then we're going to do the grocery store grab. We have Menage a Trois Midnight Dark Red Blend today because, saucy. And that's just kind of silly and fun. So things that have been new around here. Better lighting control. We finally got the curtains installed in here so that we have, we can go from here to and back again. So really mess with our lighting situation. Hopefully keep things under control like that right there that I just messed up. But anyway, so that's a hooray thing. We also did rosé tasting last week, and something I forgot to mention in the topic, something that escaped my list. So hello, Miss Mary and David and Miss Donna. But yeah, something I missed on my list to talk about frosé. Another trend after the whole rose all day thing that had been going on for the last couple of years. I wanted to make my stance clear that frose is bad for you. Okay. And that basically meaning, so if you guys don't know, frose is a drink where it's a cocktail where they basically freeze rose wine and add a bunch of extra booze to it. Well, guess what? Freezing wine destroys the aromatic compounds that makes wine taste like wine. It's the whole reason you're there in the first place. So when you destroy aroma compounds, you destroy flavor. Basically, you're just getting the color and the colored water. And that sucks. And there's no reason to do it. So frankly, we already have it in other forms of cocktails. So have a strawberry margarita, Karen, and just fucking relax. There's my short 30 seconds on frosé and why it's bad for you. So anyway, carrying right along. Today's main topic, we're going to talk about politics and wine. A disclaimer, this is about the politics of the wine industry. We're in an unprecedented time when it comes to our national politics, but I'm going to stick to the wine angle only for this video. So just FYI, we're not talking about politics in the grand scheme of things. We're specifically going to talk about economic politics. It doesn't really matter which way you lean politically as far as to hear the message that I'm talking about here. I think that basically this affects your pocketbook and your wine drinking. And so whichever direction you lean on the political spectrum, this conversation needs to happen anyway. So what is at issue is the first question. Tariffs is the basic bottom line here. We're going to talk about the fact that we've got European tariffs. As of October 2019, there is currently a 25% tariff tax on wine from France, Germany, Spain, and the UK, under 14% alcohol by volume and under 2 liters in size. Okay? So this was a response to a subsidy of the aerospace company Airbus by the above countries that was deemed illegal by the World Trade Organization. Okay, so they were basically subsidizing this company. WTO said, yeah, you can't do that. The U.S. was allowed to impose $7.5 billion worth of tariffs in reply. And so we decided, for whatever reason, that we were going to go after things like scotch and cheese and wine, okay, some of their primary exports. The other thing we're going to talk about are Chinese tariffs because of our global and ongoing trade war and our general economic policy towards tariffing things as some method of punitive economic action. It's a tit for tat game, and the Chinese tatted our tits, meaning that they imposed a 25% tariff on U.S. imported wine. So at the same time that we're paying extra for stuff from Europe, our exporters are suffering for 25% to one of the largest markets on the planet. So why is this a problem? Well, first things first, we need to talk about what tariffs are, okay? Hey, speaking of my man, Dan Granquist, perfect. You show up for the wine and economics show. I love it. So we're going to talk about tariffs and say hi to Kay for me as well. I said, so tariffs, why are they a problem? Well, guess what? Tariffs are paid in the U.S. with the way that our trade policy works is that they're paid by the importer of products from the country where the tariff is being levied. Okay. That means that the companies that are paying the money, that extra 25%, are basically U.S. companies, specifically U.S. importers required by wait for it, the three-tier system that we got stuck with after Prohibition. Yeah, Prohibition yet again raising its ugly head, and because importers have to be a very specific part of that three-tier system, those companies are subject to paying that import levy. So why is that a bad thing? Well, do you really think those companies are just going to pay them for your benefit? But they're just going to say, "Ah, bummer, our products cost 25% more. I guess we'll just eat that cost because we're nice." Well, no, sorry. Those costs get passed on to you. Or in certain cases where decisions have to be made, those products won't be available at all. In other words, they're going to choose other options as well. By the way, you may hear a broad brush about European tariffs. Notice that the countries listed above does not include Italy. This isn't about the EU. It's about the people who own Airbus. Okay, so that's why Italy is exempt from. And by the way, they have seen a wonderful rise in their imports. But counterpoint here, right? So the other kind of thing that you hear people talk about tariffs is that, but they benefit non-imported markets. They benefit domestic producers, because if the consumer has a more expensive choice in European wine, then they're going to favor American wine in response. Yeah, that's the thought. No, sorry, the data and the economics actually don't work that way. In most new economic models, tariffs don't benefit non-import markets. They harm domestic consumers more than they actually benefit domestic producers. And to go to our second point, in the case of China, any export benefit that we're supposedly getting or import benefit that we're negating by causing those same producers that have their costs go up when it comes to exporting to the largest market on the planet, right? So there's no win here. The bottom line is that tariffs are all the way around the economic circle. Whether you're the one that's having to pay extra because your costs are going up because you're having to import them, or whether your goods are being costing more in your end target market, they're really just a bad way to do economic policy. They're anti-free market, no matter how you go about it. Hey, Mark, it's Betty and Mark from California. Well, hello, Betty and Mark. Great to see you guys up on the Wednesday show. So we're talking economics of tariffs, and because we love just a good casual topic here on WineShark Wednesday. But anyway, so tariffs suck. They're bad. They're not good for you. And without getting into the long, boring, dry economic stuff, if you look at the actual data, there's no win out of them for anybody. But why does it matter to you? I mean, well, from a personal perspective, if you value a free market, then the above concepts for trade policy is just the height of stupidity. It's not the way you go about getting what you want. It's the economic tantrum equivalent. If you value a good choice of wine products at your local wine store, the above only hurts it. Okay, tariffs don't do you any good. They just make the stuff you want harder to get or more expensive. It also, if you want quality imports at reasonable prices, same thing. The price issue is a big issue. And if you value small business, if you happen to be a small business owner, or if you're one of the 47,000 independent wine retailers in the U.S. or 6,500 small distributors in that middle tier you're directly impacted by these things. Now, again, I'm very anti the three-tier system, but the fact is you're still talking about over 50,000 businesses, 60,000 businesses that are all impacted because of this particular thing. And it's all people who are working and doing business here in the U.S. This is on top of, by the way, all the problems that we're talking about with the current global pandemic and the economic slowdown in general. So we're not helping ourselves left, right, or center. So I wanted to talk then a minute by extension about the concept that you'll hear often bandied around about voting with your dollar. Right. So this is an interesting moral and ethical concept that's basically a thought exercise in how you choose to buy based on the morals / ethics / policies of the companies that use this. The reason that this came up is because another factor in the political world is that they just released basically political donation numbers for each of the major candidates in the wine world was exposed, and there's a ton of basically right-leaning and Republican politicians that support or that were being supported by various wine companies and within the industry, including stuff like Wine Spectator magazine and things like that. So this kind of shook everybody up. So people started thinking about, well, okay, I'm not going to buy the brands that support the people that I don't support. Well, So another disclaimer before we get too deep into this topic: voting with your dollar does not alleviate you from voting. Okay, don't mistake those two things. Voting with your dollar is more a moral principle of just trying to only buy things and support things that you find ethical. So, but here the other kind of the slippery slope there is that voting with your dollar is an intrinsically consumption-minded approach, and that's true. But the assumption here is you're buying wine anyway. You're buying wine for your own recreational purposes, and therefore you are, you are already in this market. This is a consumption factor you've already factored into your world. So unless you're just deciding to drink less wine, this is still about where you spend your money on wine. Okay. Voting with your wallet does actually cost extra to you. Specifically, it means it costs you extra work and time. And it really goes on a ratio and scale of how much are you willing to dig? How much time are you willing to put into? And are you willing to forego certain things, luxuries, pleasures, necessities, even based on what the companies that you support do? It's very hard if you're really trying to match up a truly do no harm type attitude with the world that we live in. There's some economic realities that get in front of that, I'm afraid. But if presented with simple information that goes against what you believe, changing who you give your money to can have a real impact. I mean, it's not even really just about you. It's about you and the many, many like you. It's not about just one voice. It's about many and the things that people see in that target. I can also tell you right now that in our age of social media and information age, that press, the press visibility / public relations is an avid part of most major businesses. And so if a business starts seeing themselves be portrayed in a light that they don't particularly like, that effect can go far beyond simply voting with your dollar. So in kind of some of my research on how well does this work and what are some of the realities of it, there's also a counterpart article that I read by a guy named Paris Marx. And he speaks about what's called the wealth gap issue. And this is the idea that our choices as individual consumers matter little compared to people with more wealth. This, by the way, is the same kind of thing we talk about in the world of climate change. You might hear people talk about how individual impacts from your particular change of lifestyle can have much less impact than a billion-dollar corporation. Well, that is true. As a matter of scale, that is absolutely accurate. But it's not really a fair comparison when it comes to we're talking about voting with your dollar, and especially as it regards to the world of wine. For number one, if we're putting ourselves here, we're talking about individuals. We're not talking about corporations buying up a bunch of consumer-targeted wine. Okay, we're not saying that this isn't about Hilton's account versus yours. Really, we're talking about wealthy people, wealthy individuals. And if we're really breaking it down to an individual level, is that one person actually buying and consuming so much more wine that they're wildly influential outside their particular consumptive habit? So do they, if we got 15 wine drinkers together, does that one millionaire or billionaire drink 15 times as much wine as I do? That would be an interesting topic, I must say. Teach us back. So 9 minutes late. And Dan saying voting with your dollar means a lot more when you direct your dollars to a news source rather than not the spending on another. Truth. Very, very good point. Yeah, trending direct money towards growing businesses. Great example. And that's where established businesses have scales. Exactly right. These market trends are market trends. There's always going to be those sorts of things. So that's a very, very good point that Dan makes, is that we're talking about taking your money away from them and doing something else with it, not necessarily shifting it from business to business. But, that's the other factor of, it's not a solution. Voting with your dollar is not a solution for economic inequality, about comparing the very wealthy to the average Joe. But when it comes to the target of wine and how you voice and make your choices, it's really easy to go with those, not to go with the big brands that do big things and go with small brands that do small things, or, into smaller brands that, as Dan was mentioning, are growing up in their business. So the other question there, of course, is, where are you spending your economic money in wine? When we're talking about grocery store brands like we're going to be talking about later here in the show, or we're talking about, the big money brands, we have the E&J Gallows of the world, the Millennium brands, things like that. Or are we talking about, the really high end? Are we talking about the Bordelais? Are we talking about the people that buy wine at auction, not at the grocery store? Those are really very, very different economic worlds. And when we're talking about people who watch the percentage growth of, say, White Claw seltzer versus whether you're buying rosé wine, the fact is those broad consumer products are very different than we're talking about. We're talking about you don't like who Cake Bread, donated money to. Something else that's very interesting about that, a big caveat and an asterisk, for if you ever get around to reading that report, notice that a lot of those people are individual donors, not necessarily the businesses themselves. Okay, some of those examples that they gave that were kind of in an outcry were people like the owner of, I believe it was of the wine. I think it was Wine Spectator, not Wine Enthusiast, but don't quote me. I don't have the article in front of me. He, as an individual donor, made a very large donation. That's different than, say, you'll see, by the way, so I used an example. Of course, I went through it. My local shop, Total Wine, where do they lie on the spectrum? You're going to find them with donations in every single category, because what they're tracking is the fact that they happen to be wine-based employers, but the individuals were making contributions. Okay, so it wasn't about necessarily the company. It was about individuals who happened to work at that company, which that's, you can't hold the employer responsible for the politics unless it's the employer on the employer's behalf supporting that cause. So be very cautious. Don't get wrapped up in just because you see a name in there all of a sudden to go, oh, screw them, they supported the wrong candidate. Me no liking no more. Be very cautious in thinking about what that says about your business. What did David Mayer said? The wealthy person may not drink more wine than the average person, but they carry the big name influence of many others. Yeah, well, and that's exactly right. The what they're drinking, the trending things. I mean, believe me, that's we talked at the Rosé show, for instance. We talked about a couple of years back. One of the most popular rosés in the world, one of those popular rosés that was being imported to the U.S. The Whispering Angel. A single wine represented 20% of the whole rosé market, and this stuff was a $90 bottle of rosé. That says something about trends right there. That's some powerful, trending. You're like, ooh, I got to be one of them Joneses, and I have to have that bottle. Hell's Kitchen shows before, so Gordon must like it. Oh, I don't know about that, Donna. We're not going to go that far. I'm not going to make any claims for Mr. Ramsey just yet, but we're going to get there. So anyway, in summary, thinking about those three things, thinking about tariffs and how you support, and making sure that you let your representatives know if you talk to your government, if you're one of the people that does actually make active voice and think about that. Those are bad things. Tariffs suck all the way around. When you're looking at money and it comes into how people in the wine industry then support it, the sad part is it goes to perfect example of showing you that the largest portion of the donors were to the party that's basically causing the tariffs. It's not an economic self-benefit. It's really kind of counterproductive, which is unsurprising in our current environments, to be completely honest with you. People tend to vote against their own interests and not even know it. But I'll tell you right now, it's all about that. To me, as a consumer, trying to get the best opportunities that I can, and to not get in the way of a very big pool of wine and that underneath that iceberg, not just the tip of the big economic ladder that we see from the big companies. So, all right, so let's get into the grocery store grab. So the grocery store grab, for those of you that are joining us for the first time or have not been around, the premise is to get the best value per dollar for wines that are found at non-specialty and non-big box retailers. Okay, so if you don't have the opportunity, so a lot of people don't have a great big box retailer wine store, or even a little boutique wine store, or just for convenience, they often shop at the grocery store. And the grocery store can be a particularly challenging landscape, not only due to its high competition and occasional price markups, but a place where what we're really going to rely on is a low level of entry knowledge, basically utilizing what we know about wine labeling and letting the label guide us to high quality products at reasonable prices. Okay, so that's the general premise here for those that are they're wondering what we do with grocery stores. So I don't choose the wines with any prior research like I do with normal tastings. I basically do label only type purchasing. I may have, of course, heard of the wine before or seen it on the shelves. Doesn't mean I'm ignorant to the wine itself. Generally speaking, I'm trying wines that are new to me because I want to help expand that for you guys as well, not just regurgitate to you wines that I know are good that are from the grocery store. So this week's selection, the Menage Trois Midnight, because A, it makes you giggle when you say it, and B, because it's all about red blends and the red blend trend, which we're going to talk about later. Dan has a rational opinion. No, so if you want to change people's minds while drinking wine, drink with rational people and talk about how to make the world better. Hell yes. There right there is actually the rationalist point of view of get behind your wine, get philosophical, and be willing to have big conversations about deep and weighty topics. In vino veritas and all that. So Menage a Trois. Let's talk a little bit about this. This is definitely one of those stunt brands that has gone from a middle upper range, if I recall, maybe 10 years ago. They were probably running at the $15 to $20 mark. That has gone down significantly as they have gotten more popular. I would actually I have not, as I said, done any research, but I would really bet that this brand was bought up by a larger brand and is used to reach a broad audience. Okay, this wine was found at $8.99 per bottle. It was the final retail price on The Price is Right. However, the list price for this wine, let me see, where did I put that in my notes? Where'd it go? Oh no, I've moved something. I've done a thing, and it didn't get written down in the notes today while I was doing stuff. Let's see here. Let me open up a spreadsheet because, I'm on the computer and I can do that. So, of course, it's going to take friggin' forever. But anyway, so $8.99, right? Very reasonably priced grocery store level. That's very much at that price, the point that we're looking to kind of focus on. Its original list, here we go. That's where it was. Is grand total, I think it was $16, and they wanted $16 for this wine, I believe. Sorry, I'll go back with that. Yeah, $16.99. So we've talked about this a little bit before, but I want to refresh the idea. The wine's got a $17 list price, and they're marking it down $10, $9. What does that say? Well, it means either that price initially was inflated in the first place and designed to get you to look at like, oh my God, what a bargain. Okay, that's one of the things that we have to be very careful of in the grocery store is that they are willing to pay for that marketing data because that's that club price. That's if you give them your information, your marketing information, and tell them that you're buying this wine, they will give you a very deep discount because they want to know that those lobbying dollars to get the county to turn went to the right cause. Plus, it's a very high markup item with a good return on their investment, and so they want to make sure they're moving the right products on the shelves. The shelf space is highly competitive, and therefore they want to make sure those products move well. So let's talk about the label. This is, as I said, this is a classic, amusing brand. They're playing on the fact, they're playing the giggity angle here with Menage a Trois. This is their midnight dark red blend. Okay, one of the other reasons I want to try this is we're going to talk a little later in another one of the wine trends shows. We've talked about Merlot, we've talked about Syrah, but we're also going to talk about red blends and how they came around to be the new black. And we're going to talk about Malbec was the new black a couple years ago, red blends. And then even next week, we're going to talk about the new, oh my God, we got to put everything in a barrel trend, which is, we're going to have to see how that works out for yours truly. So in front of the label, remember, I accommodate this. This is your marketing space. Do whatever you wish here. Although you usually want to see something on here, at least about where the wine is from. This is a California 2018. So it at least tells me the where in the real world it's from and what the vintage is. So that's usual. Who it's from, what it is, and the fact that it is a red blend as opposed to a specific varietal. Well, that's cool. So let's take a look at the back though. This was the buying decision portion of their label, right? So they repeat the information on the front, but then here's their spiel. Experience the dark side of a Menage a Trois. That's the one that involves a trip to the clinic afterwards. But with Midnight, a luxurious dark red blend to satisfy your deepest desires, because the Menage a Trois wasn't doing it already. Voluptuous black cherry and berry flavors with hints of mocha and exotic spice play across your lips, urging you to turn out the lights and savor the pleasures of the dark. Okay, well, hey, well, no overt blindfold references or things like that, but yeah, obviously their language is playing into their particular marketing style. But let's look at the words that we care about as a wine drinker. We're talking about dark cherry and berry flavors, hints of mocha and spice, right? That's the flavor words that we're looking for, right? If we now, what are the things they are? There, this is only getting about a B plus for me because as a red blend, what are they not telling me? They didn't tell me anything about the grapes that are used in this. Okay. So that's not helpful for me as a wine drinker, as a blend drinker as well, because blending can go a lot of different directions from a lot of different points. All we know is that it's a red wine with probably a lot of red grapes in it. Could have white ones in there too, by the way. Chateau de Pop could do that too. But that's a little bit of a sin on my part, on their part there. But other than that, they've at least got flavor words. They skipped out on pairings. Food pairings is always an opportunity we'd like to see as well. And again, we want them to be as specific as possible. So I'd rate this as C plus, B minus, maybe, as far as they're concerned. They mixed in their marketing and their wine words. So that's, again, I think that's they're relying a little too much on lifestyle, a little too much on their humor. But I kind of knew that going in. This is especially when you get away from brands that are aiming at name or elegance or in that kind of family friendly mode. When you get into the other side of things, it tends to kind of go the other way. So just not wildly surprised at that. So we missed our percentages, so we're gonna have to do some guessing here. But we got their flavor words, so let's go. So let's do a taste here and run through the grid real quick. But the informal grid. We're not going to do the full Somm grid here, but so swirl around. I mean, the color, indeed, it is inky dark. So they have either high extraction or at this price point, I would really want to dive into how they make their wine and whether they use any particular color agents. I'm looking at you, Super Purple. I'm looking at you, Ruby Red Grapes. Why that help to color intensify? Because without knowing the grape types inside, I can't say. On the nose, we got an almost cloying level of berry going on. A little on the syrupy side, if we're gonna. I mean, it's a velvety, kind of overtly sweet. We're definitely getting a lot of sweet on the nose, and without any defined particular fruit flavor. I would go with black fruits over red ones, but berries is a generic one here. I mean, are we talking about raspberries, cranberries, blueberries, boysenberries, blackberries? Those all have the word berry in them, and they're very different in their context. So, yeah, I'm going generic. I mean, maybe on the boysenberry syrup side of things, baked, maybe in that baked blueberry kind of thing, like a muffin. But yeah, again, kind of coming off the nose, really on the sweet side. Okay, on the mouth side, that sweet is not there. It is a full dry wine. So, anybody who's looking for sweet reds, this is not your jam. It is, again, indistinctly fruit forward. We don't have any, we've got dark fruits. We have reductive flavors like jam, compote, syrups and things like that. It's not bright. Acidity is very on the mild side. This is probably in that up close to 4.0 pH range, meaning it doesn't have that sharp mouth-watering acidity that we're looking at to cleanse our palate. It's kind of limp-wristed in that department. It is soft across the palate, though. The tannins are not wildly grippy. Okay, it's got malolactic fermentation, so it's got that creamy, buttery feel that's going on in our mouth. That's what that velvety is, that smooth softness. If that's a trait you like in your wines, this is definitely one of those for you. And that soft red glove. But the fruits, again, are just kind of non-distinct, and I can kind of see maybe where that mocha hint comes late in the palate and up in that retronasal breathing when you come through. But generally speaking, this is the least complicated Menage a Trois you're ever likely to encounter. And I may or may not be talking about the wine. But anyway, this is so we're not doing a full critical rundown of this wine in comparison to that. Mostly we ask only 3 questions of our grocery store. So this: is it well executed? Is it on style, and is it worth the price tag? So execution. This comes just from the winemaker's art itself. Is it a well-made wine? It does also have a lot of heat. There's residual heat on this. We did not look yet at its alcohol by volume. Let's see. I'm going to put 13.5. I would have called it a little hotter than that at about 14, but it is portrayed within its palate instead of being hidden by its fruit and acid. So that's an unfortunate reality. Not as extracted as the color wants it to be. I'm betting. This is that part where I want to behind the scenes and find out what they're doing to get their particularly dark look, and whether it's just contact with their grape skins or whether they're kind of cutting the corners. But is it well executed? I'd say meh. There are, and especially to go to the third question, is it worth the price tag? For $9, I can get a lot better red than this. This is not one that I would run to or recommend as a good $9 bottle of wine. This is in that range where this is that even lower end quality. It's not a harmful wine. It's not this is a wine that I would avoid, and it's not poorly made, but it is definitely lackluster. And then lastly, is it on style? Well, for the red blends, that's a very challenging question because they didn't tell us what grapes are in it. I can't really tell you that question. If this has a ton of Petit Verdot and Petit Syrah, maybe I could say yes. It's probably got a little. It's got a cab percentage, I would bet, but not a ton. To give you an example of comparison, when we did the Carnivore Zin at that same price point, that's about the same thing, but a little bit better. And we also had what was our other grocery store grab with the Merlot, the Chateau Saint Jean. I mean, that by comparison at the same price point was by far a more well executed single Merlot. I mean, again, not a very big rich Merlot, but at least had an on style, on presence kind of effect. So again, it ain't awful. It's not offensive, but it doesn't have much going on to it. What we're going to do here is we're going to let this open up a little while. And one of the other things I'm going to start practicing and doing this is we're going to start decanting some of these a little bit more, give them some more time in the air, because this one wasn't open, but maybe and in my glass for maybe 20 minutes before we started. But that ought to start showing some effects. Okay. So there it is, Menage a Trois. It's about what you'd expect. I think the brand is definitely punching around that $10 price point and probably not going to get much up out of it. I wouldn't reach for this first at the grocery store, but you can find others in that same price point. I think they'll carry you. So excellent, and doing well. So Q&A time. What questions do you guys have for me? We are, by the way, doing a Patreon Q&A just immediately after this. It's a private Zoom show. It's a two-way show. One of the benefits of being a patron. But for you guys, questions in the chat, I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about the topics above? I mean, whether it's, have you been affected by tariffs? Did you even know that we were dealing with tariffs? Have you ever done your voting with $1? Or just irrational or rational questions. Donna, tell me about Hell's Kitchen and what Gordon Ramsay thinks of this wine, because I've got like some Gordon Ramsay level insults I have not leveled at this wine. So, because, when it comes to swearing, he's one of my favorites. He does truly good job sometimes. I think that's some of the virtue of perhaps being Scottish. It's part of the national thing. Because, I mean, Gordon Ramsay calling somebody a donkey is just somehow spicier than when I say it. I don't know. So no questions. Everybody's quiet. Everybody's drinking. There are actually people still online. So, okay, it's not just me talking to you into the Ethernet. You saw it being served on the show. He uses Penzi spices, although those are awesome. Penzi spices are awesome. This is true. I completely agree with that statement. Penzi's is a great part of showing, an opportunity. For those of you that don't have an opportunity, I mean, but definitely go check them out when it comes to local shopping here in Dallas. There's a great store over on Preston at 635, but order them online. They have a fantastic reputation for high quality, for good durability, and really some fun custom blended seasonings that I think are just delightful. So I would highly recommend you guys check out Penzies. But I'm betting that placement on the show for this particular wine, Miss Donna, had more to do with who makes it and sells it than with the quality of the wine. Mark Midland, 2016, 59% Merlot. So this is the 18. Can you find a data sheet on that one, Mark? But this is a Merlot, Cab, Petit Syrah, Petit Verdot blend. See, called two of those, 25% on the darks, on those two dark boys, this Petit Syrah and Petit Verdot. Those are very rich, dark and thin-skinned, small-berried varietals. Therefore, they extract a lot of color, a lot of flavor. Sad part is, you see, leading 60% Merlot. So, loving Ruby Port, but it's not a couch wine. Is there an alternative? Oh, wow. All right. So, loving Ruby Port. That's a funky... You're in a funky zone there. I love it because you're right. That's kind of heavy. Now, here's the cool part, Dan. You want to drink like a true Portuguesa. And if you want to drink, is that the proper term for somebody from Portugal? I'm not sure. But in Portugal, when they do their day drinking with port, they take Ruby Port and tonic water with a squeeze of lime, or club soda with a squeeze of lime. And so they make a spritzer out of it, right? That way they don't get that nice weight, but they use that nice, thick, dense, berried wine, that beautiful... you've got boysenberry and tobacco and pomegranate, and you've got that kind of caramel thing going on, and creme brulee and all that complication. And then they just lighten it up. It's something like, and I believe the tradition is something around, oh man, I'm drawing a blank here, but I want to guess if I remember the article correctly. It's something just like 1 part to 20. So I mean, it's not, if that's the keer that I'm thinking of, it's a heavier weight than that. It's like they put a quarter of a glass of port, a normal port portion, which is 3 or 4 ounces, and then top it off with soda and a squeeze. So check that out if you want something refresher for just hanging out on the couch. Donovan says, I have to order them online, and you've never been disappointed. Awesome. Marion David saying, I ordered some Bordeaux on the futures market a year or two back through Total Wine, and it came in after the tariffs. I paid the increase. I still want Bordeaux. What else can you do? Answer. Notice the specifics of the wording of the law. It's 14% or less alcohol by volume and 2 liters or less. Buy large format. Fuck it. Buy a Nebuchadnezzar. It'll be great. You can just buy, one giant bottle. Or actually, it's going to come out next week. Our topic is going to be format and format fixes, which is a different, funky way of saying we're going to talk about cans and boxed wines. Okay, we're going to talk about breaking down some stigmas with those and how you should be embracing them wholeheartedly. But one of the things that there are 2 ways right now that European producers are getting around the tariffs. Number one, and so there's a little preview from next week. So for those of you that aren't here, but for those of you can listen to me hear it, say it twice. That is, they're using basically these giant bags. I mean, I'm talking refrigerator shipper car size bags, a big Connex bag full of wine. Well, that's not a container that they can tack because it's not under 2 liters when it's coming here. And then they box it up here. And those are specifically for boxed wines. The rosé world is doing a lot of that right now. Something I saw in my research for that show. That's one. But honestly, you're playing in the world of Bordeaux futures. You don't get to complain about price. That's literally just one of the things that you're doing. I mean, you're playing the gambling game with futures in the first place. So that's just a sorry about your bad luck move. I mean, the real answer is drop the damn tariffs. You want to fight against Airbus and you want to complain about their advantage, fine. But could we find something equivalent, like, other planes, perhaps automobiles? Why you got to mess with the wine and the cheese, man? Because all you're really doing there is you're not hurting big corporations. You're hurting mostly the little consumers. So that's another one. There we go. 40% Merlot, 30 Cab. Again, although they dropped under 21% Petit Syrah, Petit Verdot. Thank you, Mark Midland, for your research on spec tech sheets. Like I said, that's one of the things I specifically don't do prior to showtime. But I'm glad to have you guys out there sleuthing on the internet for me. because, like I said, I don't want those types of decisions to happen at the grocery store. I want you guys to be able to read a label and do it. And that means I want them to put it on the damn label. How hard is it? Right? It's not that difficult. The first time I saw Menage a Trois, I bought it because of the name. Well, exactly. Giggity, right? I mean, why wouldn't we? It was when I went to commiserate with my sister who had just kicked her ex to the curb for cheating. That's what we refer to as irony. That's the look, I bought you a bottle of Menage a Trois for your cheating husband. Wait, what? That's not right. That's definitely not right. I was actually looking into as well as one of the other popular brands that's although I think it has retained its upper middle price point. It is one called Conundrum, which basically was early into the blend market because that they were always a white blend, and they were in that 15 to 20 price point. Now, I saw them at the store, but their set was wrong. In other words, there wasn't a price for the wine that was set there. So I withheld holding it until later, buying it till later rather, and then we'll check it out. So the other thing you can do, Dan, is, by the way, ruby port. There's the other real spritzer thing is white port or rosé ports. Rosé ports are actually brand new, and I mean in the world of wine, that's like they only got invented in 2008. And then there's white port, which has been around for a long time. Those are two of the deep dive into the port shows I have not done yet. We did a port primer 3 weeks ago where we just talked about Ruby and Tawny and just kind of those broad classes, right? We've not got into LBVs. We not get into vintage. We did not get into Colheita. We did not get into. I mean, I've got lots of port stuff that we're going to be doing in a probably second and probably third show. Just due to alcohol by volume and price point. Usually we're only going to do 2 bottles in any given tasting. So that's something to keep your eyes on. And you can go back and watch them on the Patreon if you missed them. But really, really cool stuff. We talk about some of the stuff. So Dan, by the way, was one of the first persons in my life that introduced me to late bottle vintage port. And we'll talk specifically about why that's a special breed of awesome and how it works and vintages work and how the Portuguese are very particular people. And when it comes to their making of their wines, it's really kind of cool. Port is a nice topic when it comes to if you really want to kind of dig into the minutia of wine things. Port's just as complicated as anywhere else, and when it comes to some of their wine laws and how they make wine, all the nuance that comes along with everything, or whatever the Portuguese word for nuance is. So. Excellent. All right. Well, like I said, this has been an interesting show so far. I mean, like I said, the number of political things that have been coming into my inbox from some of my wine industry news sources, both on that politics topic and on the tariff stuff, and on what is the industry doing from the economy, is really pretty interesting. Because while we are still consuming a lot of alcoholic beverages during our pandemic, the buying patterns are not the same, and it has been very disruptive, to say the least. And just like everywhere else, I mean, the wine industry, service industry, spirits industries, beer industry, they're all in that same boat. They all have the same challenges that the rest of us do when it comes to that. So, but yes, so we're going to be talking a little bit later about red blends and the how blending has become okay. So, to give you a little snapshot preview into my views on that. This is a wine trend that I'm 100% behind. That taking blending away from being a 4-letter word in the wine world is a great thing. Many students that I've run across in my years as a wine educator have told me that they thought that blends were leftovers, okay? That they were somehow inferior types of wine. And the wine market has fought against that notion for a long time. First off, the very concept of it is inaccurate on its face. Many of the world's most prestigious wines are blends. This is to include the wines of Bordeaux, which we were just talking about. The Bordelais and the Bordeaux wines are so sought after that they sell wine at futures, which, for those of you who don't know what that term means, it means in the spring, before the vines have even budded, you can bid on a lot of wines. You can buy a certain amount of wine, the case, whatever, 5 cases, whatever the number you got. And you pay a price that is set at auction about what the Bordelais think that quality year is going to be. You are gambling that the price you pay now, and you have a good growing season, that you get a high quality wine at a low price. So let's say you pay $500 for a case of wine. It comes out down the road and it's highly lauded. It's an amazing year. Wham, bam, thank you, man. You're now sitting on $1,500 worth of wine that you paid $500 for. Whoa, cool. It's the only place in the world that I know that you can do that in the world of wine. But that shows you the kind of prestige that goes behind it. Bordeaux wines are all blends. I mean, they are the Bordeaux blend. It literally is the name of what they call that, which is either a Cabernet focused or a Merlot focused blend. Okay. And it usually has, it's either 75% Cab with 15% Merlot and 10%, 15% of the other stuff, 15% Cab Franc, Petit Syrah, etc. Or it's Merlot heavy, 75% Merlot, and then the other percentages come in with Cabernet and follow on. So blending is not lesser quality. It is extraordinarily high quality. Chateauneuf de Pape is a blend wine. All the big California reds, believe it or not, when it comes to California, you only have to have 75% or more of the grape to be one type of thing to be called a single varietal of wine. It means you can have 25% of other types of grapes in there, and most of the most popular wines that you think of, even your cult status wines, are not 100% Cab or 100% anything. There's blending. Okay, so blending is a good thing. Blending is the winemaker doing his job to make sure that the product that he puts out is the highest quality possible. It's the spice rack, as Randy Lang once told me, in the winemaker's arsenal to help make sure that the wines are high quality. Okay, so red blends, and we'll talk later about just the tradition of where that comes from, are not or the blending concept isn't inferior. Now the weird part is it's red blends that really have gone underneath this trend, but white blends out there exist too. But the fact that I watched in the last 7 years the wine section in the grocery store, this is a great way to tell what's popular with a given within a given trend period. Grocery stores are sold the way that they sell footage, a certain number of feet to particular distributors, and that the distributors decide what wines go in there. Okay. So the more linear shelf space a product has, generally speaking, the more they're wanting to put it in front of you, the more popular that it is or they want it to be. Okay. I watched the blended red wine section go from about 3 bottles wide to about 20 bottles wide over the course of the last 7 years. That shows you the impact that they're having on that. So we'll do a whole rant and talk about why that stuff is cool. Red table wine. So, yeah, as Dan very interesting point about table wines, and the concept of table wine is actually one that we need to dive into, and how the American table wine scene, French table wine scene, or European table wine scene in general, actually, not just France, and what that means, and how different our experience in America has become because of our interruption with prohibition, how our big business of wine is the ones that are able to get in front of it. Because in Europe, by and large, what you have is a lot smaller countries than ours, physically and geographically speaking, that have access to wine very nearby. A lot of local common wines, or vin de table, the typical vino in Italy, and vino de mesa in Spain and Portugal. These are wines that are just from nearby as much as anything else. They're local wine producers that just produce stuff, or even localities that produce their own wine just in that village lifestyle, that smaller cities, and villages. We here don't have that opportunity. I mean, there's a lot, although Idaho drinks more wine per capita than everywhere else in the country, it's not like they're littered with a high production of wine. They do have wineries, by the way. They're just not littered with them. Same thing. Lots of places in our nation don't grow wine nearby. So wine is a big business when it becomes to a national level distribution product. And so we've had a very different journey with red table wine, or table wine in general. And a lot of it is what was we were mocked for as we were coming out of prohibition, and trying to regain and push a table wine culture. Right. I mean, this is the weird part, where guys like Robert Mondavi and Ernest and Julio Gallo and all these guys that made high-end, high-quality wines. These guys are marrying, Rothschilds and the elite of the American rich societies. they tried bringing into these wines for the common man. They tried bringing in this stuff. This is where, white Zinfandel came from. I mean, not the fact that they were trying to make a wine, a blush wine, similar to the European styles that Americans would consume in the same way that we did other things. And it's been so interesting because our journey has gone so weirdly different than the European things. A lot of people talk about when they go on a European vacation and they come back and they're like amazed with the wines that they find, these inexpensive, just easy to drink, just they're €5-6 a bottle. They're just delightful, they're refreshing, they're light, and they're like, whoa, this is amazing. And I've never had anything like this. Well, that's because we in America don't have anything really quite the same, or we do. It's mass marketed and overproduced compared to this smaller product. And so it's just different. It's odd. Apothic has had some decent winemaker blends, both reds and white. Yeah, Apothic kind of made its name on being a blend wine. Okay. Apothic Dark, blah, 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 blah. I want to know kind of about their thing there, about where they go. And because I'd like to see what their kind of what was their progeny? Where did they come from? Was this a particular project that was born of some winemakers wanting to do blends and market them as such, or whether it a split off of another project or parties? So I'd like to be interested. Dan, when you said it's just one guy, which one guy are we talking about? Are we talking about Menage and things like that? Or are we talking about something else? Just curious to address the question. So, because again, our poor American table wine experience, this is that part where, when we look in the modern world, it's how can we get smaller production, inexpensive wine, right? Stuff from the little guy, or that's just not mass produced. Because when it comes to some of these $9 wines like this, remember I was talking about cutting corners and things that winemakers especially at scale do to basically to cater to palate questions that we've got. I'm going to use oak as an example. Okay. Oak's expensive. Oak barriques and the barrels that we age them in, for instance, are expensive. Therefore, the shortcut to using expensive oak barrels is to what's called planking. Okay, you take a big stainless steel fermentation vessel, you basically line it and every other width with oak 2x4s, and you soak it and circulate it in there. Okay, it's not at all the same effect that you're getting in an oak barrique. What you're trying to do is you're trying to extract oak flavoring from those planks. You're not getting the tannin oxidization, breathing, all the things that you do when you rest a wine 18 months in an oak barrel. You're not going to get that in 3 months putting it in an oak tank that's lined with planks, or if you dip a giant tea bag of oak chips into a tank. And yes, that stuff does happen. Those are the shortcuts that they're trying to do to make this inexpensive wine taste like you expect, right? They're trying to amp up the quality. It's the FD&C yellow number 5. It's the although I don't want to badmouth MSG, but MSG, it's a flavor enhancer is what it's supposed to be. It's that. And there's a lot of techniques that can do that they mess with at the bottom levels of wine to get that product to be inexpensive. I'll warn you now, you'd be shocked, I say, to find out how actually inexpensive one of these bottles, 750 milliliters, coming out of the factory costs the factory, and what they're actually selling it at to the wholesaler. Yeah, you'd be like, pick your jaw up off the floor, because the economics are a lot about what's in between you, me, and that grape field. So, all right, we're running close on time here. Wanted to kind of wrap up, talk a little bit about what's coming soon in our tastings on Fridays. We've got Wines on the Grill on Friday, Bubbles on July 3rd, Wine and Cheese Show on the 10th, and Zinfandel's $20 to $40. We're going to get into upper end Zins on the 17th. So then we're going to do Wine Picnic, and then we're going to do Pinot Noir at the end of July. So those are the online tastings. On the WineShark Shorts, the basics and the stuff that you're going to see on the YouTube channel. Next 2 videos, we're going to talk about wine service temperature, how to simplify and understand what temperature you should be serving your wine. And then the next week's video is on why temperature matters. Why do you care what temperature your wine is and why it's so important to not screw that up. So fun education in the basics series coming on as well. So in closing, I love you guys' chat and comments here, but if you guys have deeper questions, etc., post them in the comments once the video gets posted up here in a few minutes. Probably it won't happen immediately after the show because I'm going to do a Q&A, so it'll probably happen in an hour. But if you do have a big question that you would like an answer to for posterity, post it down in those comments so I can reply to you there. Talk about how you vote with your dollar. Talk about your thoughts on tariffs. Any other questions you've got that I'm welcome to answer as well. So if you like what you're doing, hit the like button and subscribe to us. Ring the little bell down there to get notified of new content and share with a wine-loving friend. If you really like what we're doing, come over and support us on Patreon. All my patrons help keep this WineShark swimming in the right direction. And I want to show a huge shout out to my cellar level supporters, Barb and Dan and Matt and the other Matt and David and Mary. You guys are amazing, and your generosity is, as always, just truly awesome. So for those the patrons, you guys are going to benefit from one of their patron benefits here in just a minute. They're going to log on for a live Q&A. That's a free service that we're going to talk about. So you can do a two-way video chat. You don't have to sit there and type anything. Keeps both your hands free for drinking. Okay, so awesome. I will, by the way, post links in the bottom of in the comments and details sections. I will update this once it posts with what are they called? Library bookmarks, so you can skip ahead to sections. And I'll post links to the articles that talk about wine tariffs, the wine and politics issues, and voting the pros and cons of voting with your dollar and whether it works or whether it doesn't. Some of the research stuff that I was doing so that you guys can think on it and make your decisions on your own. So thank you guys so much, as usual, for your support. I hope to see you guys again at a tasting soon. And until next time, I have been your Wine Shark. Cheers. Bye now.